So that's exciting. And I have here a bag with all of the books in it. And I have kind of like a rustly type of jacket. I don't know if we like the sound or not. Maybe I'll take it off just in case we don't like it. Okay, the jacket is off. So, I'm not gonna go in any particular order with the books. The only order I'm gonna go in is I'm gonna start with my all-time favorite book ever, which is Flowers. Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. This is not the real cover. This is a cover that I made in design school as like a rebrand for the book. This is the real cover with the mouse. This book was published in originally 1966. And if you do not know, I think Flowers for Algernon is a classic. Now it's considered, but it is about a man named Charlie Gordon who goes. Hold on, I just want to make sure I don't tell you anything that's not on the back. So it's about a man named Charlie Gordon who has an abnormally low IQ for a grown man. He was born with a low IQ, and he basically gets asked to be part of an experiment where they do brain surgery on him, and they basically make him a genius. This is their first human trial of this experiment. They've done it once before successfully on a mouse named Algernon. And Algernon is this little mouse that has become a genius and can do these mazes perfectly. So it's just about Charlie coming to terms with his new brain, the new way he perceives the world. And yeah, it's honestly beautiful and it's amazing. And my favorite she falls in love with Elliot, and it's just about them figuring out love and what that means, slash them growing into adults and having to figure out what that means. But it takes place dual timeline, so one is them falling in love as children, teenagers, whatever, and the other is them years and years later having not talked for years, and you trying to piece together what happened and why that has occurred, why they are not talking to each other when you can tell their love is so pure and so real. I read this book in like a day, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It is beautiful and amazing, and like, if you're a reader, there's a lot of book-loving quotes and stuff in this because the two characters love reading, and that's like one of the things that brought them together, and I love it so much. The next book I have talked about before, and it is Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. This is probably my second favorite thriller of all time, and my favorite genre is probably thriller. But this is basically about a seemingly perfect marriage between two beautiful people, and they're both rich and everything's amazing. But you slowly begin to realize that this couple and their life and everything about them is not what it seems. And it's amazing. And it's horrible. And it's terrifying. But I think a very important book to read. Okay, the next book is, this one was hard to pick because I wanted to pick a book from my favorite author that I really, really like, and I couldn't decide what my favorite book by her really was. But I did read this last year in like a day, and I was obsessed with it, so I think this is my favorite. But I don't know. I recommend all of her books, but I'm gonna say mostly this one. So this is Truly Madly Guilty by Liane Moriarty. And if you don't know Liane Moriarty, she wrote Big Little Lies, 9 Perfect Strangers, just so many books that have been turned into Hulu short series, stuff like that. And basically, this one is about a family party between two neighbors where something goes horrifically wrong, and it forever changes all of their lives, and it's very dramatic, and it's very much like tore them apart as two families who used to be so close, such best friends, rely on each other for a lot of things, and has just completely ruined that relationship. But you don't know what that thing is, what that event, what that traumatic incident was until the end. And I think that's what Liane Moriarty does so well, is she takes these everyday circumstances, these everyday, almost like petty little arguments, and she makes them so mysterious, so entertaining, so intriguing, that you she is one of this man's wives. He has multiple wives, and he does not want any of his wives to know about each other because he says it's just easier that way. And so basically she knows that he only comes and sees her on Tuesday or Thursday, whatever her name is. And on the other days of the week, he is with his other wives that she doesn't know their names, she doesn't know where they live, she doesn't know anything about them. And it's just about her dealing with that while also trying to stop herself from learning more about these wives. So it's just about that and her uncovering all of these things involving these multiple marriages. And it was literally so good. I think I had something going on this day that I read it. If I did not, I would have read it in like 12 hours because that's how good it was. It was so fantastic, and I highly recommend it. This next book was a big shock to me. This book is Normal People by Sally Rooney, and I read this for a challenge back when this channel was a booktube channel, and I just did book content, not ASMR content. But I got this from the library originally because I'd seen so many people talk about Sally Rooney and how good of a writer she was. And I was like, let me give it a try, like whatever. This is always the book I had heard the most about. And this is about, again, two young people. I think they start off in high school, and how basically they've been in love since high school, but it's very much right person, wrong time, like constantly throughout their lives. And it's just them falling in and out of love for the span of like, I don't even know how long. It's them throughout high school and then college, and all of like the trials and tribulations that they go through because of their social status in high school, and then how that changes in college, and their traumas as people, their family, all that good stuff. It's genuinely, this is the most realistic, heartbreaking roller coaster of a relationship I've ever seen depicted in literature and fiction. And there's so many good quotes, and it is so well crafted and well done and well paced. I genuinely say about that one, but I do love it. Okay, my next favorite book is another book from one of my favorite authors, but this book I know is my favorite book by her, and that is My Sister's Keeper by Jodi Picoult, or Jodi Picoult is how it's actually pronounced according to Jodi Picoult on TikTok. Recently this year, been calling her Jodi Picoult my whole life, but whatever. If you have not heard of My Sister's Keeper, this was made into a movie with Abigail Breslin and Cameron Diaz. And the movie's really good too, but if you have seen the movie and you're like, I don't want to read the book, it's the same story, I think you should also read the book because the ending is different. There's a lot of differences, and I think the book is better, personally. But if you do not know what My Sister's Keeper is, it is about a young girl who was born specifically to be an organ donor, a marrow match, all of these things. She was genetically engineered to be a match for her older sister who has leukemia. And that's literally the reason she was born, was to be this, like, spare for her sister, to help her sister live. So, it is about her and her sister and her mother and their whole lives, basically keeping her sister alive since she was diagnosed at like age 5, I think. And it's been a rough life because she's not sick, she doesn't have leukemia, but she's gone through so many surgeries, she's lost so many parts of herself to help her sister. And it's not that she doesn't want to, it's not that she doesn't love her sister, she just doesn't want to be seen only as this spare part. And so she decides at the age of 13 to emancipate herself from her parents so that her parents cannot make her go through all these unnecessary medical procedures and things like that. And it's really like the whole family grappling with this. And it's, as a reader, this moral dilemma of, but it's to save her sister, and it's like, where do I start? And what I can do for others begin, you know? And it's like, when is too much too much? And that's what I love about Jodi Picoult in general as a writer. She always offers up this really polarizing topic, and it really makes you think of both sides, and it really makes you, where you're like instantly one way on something, it really makes you GOODREADS so much. I think it's such a good book, and I really, really recommend it. I do think, though, I don't have it. If you're just genuinely not a reader and you want a book to get started with, to start reading, I recommend Daisy Jones and the Six over this. Very similar type of book where you follow a group, like an artist group, a band called the Six, and Daisy Jones, who is an up-and-coming artist, they're joining and them like creating one album. And what has happened the entire time they've done this album, but it's written in interview format, which is a little bit easier to read. But I think this book is better